Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this video is on a new topic. So we just took a quiz, and obviously some of you may not have been as happy as you wanted to be, but we're starting new, something totally different. Inverse functions. Okay? More specifically, how to find an inverse function is what we're going to learn about briefly, as well as what does an inverse function do? What does it really mean? So let's get started. Here we have a typical linear equation. Hopefully you recognize. It's in the form y equals mx plus b, right? Y equals mx plus b. Sorry if I was a little messy there. Let me just clean that up, but everyone should recognize y equals mx plus b. Well, let's first just practice evaluating with it, right? Completing the table over here, okay? As you can see, I have a table set up already. And so let's start by putting 4 in there. And hopefully you agree, 3 times 4 minus 5. Well, that's 12 minus 5, or 7, right? And then we're going to put in the negative 6. And we're going to get 3 times negative 6 minus 5. Now that's negative 18 minus 5, which is negative 23. And of course, if we put in the 0, let me change colors here so it stands out. We're going to get 3 times 0 minus 5. Minus 5. And 0 minus 5, of course. 0 minus 5 is, of course, negative 5, isn't it? So we complete a table. Now that has nothing to do with actually finding the inverse function, okay? But as you can see, I'm setting up the second part of the lesson, which is, what does an inverse function actually do? Okay, so let's actually find the inverse. So how do you find the inverse? Well, the key thing to remember, guys, and I'll erase this if you don't mind while I'm talking to you, but the key thing to understand is the inverse function takes the function and goes backwards. Inverse, in other words, just like, what's the inverse of multiply? It means divide, right? What's the inverse of adding? Subtracting, right? So one undoes the other, correct? It goes backwards. So, how do you find the inverse? It's actually quite simple. If you want it to go backwards, the x here, follow the gold, and the y here are going to switch places. In other words, you want the equation where x now goes to y, or y now goes to x. You want it to go in the opposite direction. So here is basically what you have to remember. Step 1, we switch the x and y. Notice again, follow the purple. The y now is where the x used to be. The x is now where the y used to be. I switched them, didn't I? Now, what do I do next? Well, to make sure it goes backwards, I got to solve for y here and get a new equation where now the y actually is the function going backwards. So, how do I solve that? Well, let me rewrite it here, just so it's a little bit neater. X equals 3y minus 5. So to solve for y, wouldn't we, for example, do maybe a plus 5 to both sides? And that means x plus 5 equals 3y, correct? And again, remember, we're trying to solve for this y right here. Follow the red now. So how about if we divide by 3? Doesn't 3 divided by 3 make 1y? And of course, I have to do the same thing over here. So notice how I divided both sides by 3. So cleaning this up right here, does everybody agree? Y, therefore, is equal to x plus 5 divided by 3. This y right here, guys, is the inverse, okay, the inverse of what we started with over here. And now I'm going to prove it to you. Notice here is x plus 5 divided by 3. Let's verify. See? X plus 5 divided by 3. Okay? And let's fill in this table with these values right here. And let's see what happens. So again, I'm just going to plug in the 7 there. And 7 plus 5 divided by 3 is 12 divided by 3. Well, that's 4, isn't it? Let's do it now with a negative 23. So we're going to take negative 23. In other words, we're now going to plug that in for x. So negative 23 plus 5 divided by 3. Well, that's negative 18 divided by 3, which is negative 6. And finally, let's use a different color here. Let's take negative 5 and plug it in. Are we not going to get negative 5 plus 5 divided by 3, which is 0 divided by 3, which is 0. Now, I don't know if you noticed something that was kind of curious, but let me just tell you. Notice our table. Now, follow the purple. Follow the purple. Notice when we put in 7, look right here, did we not get a 4 out? When we put in negative 23, did we not get this negative 6 out? When we plugged in the negative 5, did we not get the 0 out? Well, that should sound familiar. Look at our previous table. Follow the purple, guys. See, 4 went with 7, negative 6 went with negative 23, 0 went with negative 5. In other words, let's use gold here. Did we not go from negative 5 back to 0? Negative 23 back to negative 6. 7 back to 4. Look. 7 went to 4. Negative 23 went to negative 6. Negative 5 went to 0. See how this function right here, right, that function right there took the same values we ended up with here and went backwards, didn't it? And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that's why, let me go ahead and, well, let me just annotate here in purple. I know I'm getting a little messy here. Sorry about that. But here's why that right there, guys, is the inverse function. It took all the values and went backwards, didn't it? So hopefully this video made sense. Of course, we'll explain it to you in class. But guys, this is one more video that you definitely want to watch numerous times. And the goal here, again, is what? Do you know how to find the inverse function? Switch the x and y's and solve, right? Do you know what an inverse function does? It takes your resulting values, your range values, in other words, as we like to say, and takes you back to the domain if it's the inverse function, right? Anyways, hopefully most of what I say makes sense. If not, I'll clarify it in class. Until next time, guys, God bless. See you again.